Hello, I'm Frust and welcome to my EVE Online videos that look at war strategy, in particular the conflict that is happening in Delve right now. And in this episode we're going to be looking at the events that happened in the week that followed the anchoring of the PAPI Keepstar in YZ9 in Delve. Welcome back. So first things first, let me jump up into my little box. There we go, put myself up in the corner. And as you can see, we've got Dotlan in front of us. We're going to be using Dotlan a lot in this episode, as we will with all strategy episodes. And I have my calendar as well. So first things first, if you look at the map, it all looks pretty much the same, right? It's still full of yellow, Condi, which is Goonswarm, still have all the sovereignty. So has anything happened in the last week? Well, yes, it has. I mean, obviously you can see the little orange glows around these systems, and we'll come onto that in a minute. But this map doesn't really give you a true representation of the advances that PAPI have been making within Delve, and we're going to cover that in detail over the next few minutes. So first things first, moving. So nothing happened for the first 3 days. So the Keepstar was anchored on the 16th, Friday the 16th, and no activity really happened until the 19th, 20th. So that was the Monday, Tuesday. And the reason why is because of move-ups. So the staging system previously was in AQT down here at the bottom in Quirius, and then they anchored the Keepstar in YZ9 in Delve right there, and they have to move everything across. Now everybody thinks that, oh, it's just moving the player ships, right? So we just undock a few Titans, we bridge everybody across, the caps jump, job done. But actually it's a lot more complex than that, because when you move staging, you have to move the markets and you have to move the contracts. So in the case of the markets, for example, subcaps, they're going to need ammo. They're going to need E-War mods that if in case the FC decides to change the doctrine fit slightly, all of these need to be available on the market. For capitals, they're going to need fuel, they're going to need strength, they're going to need capacitor boosters. Once again, all of those have to be on the market. On top of that, we then also have the contracts for all the doctrine ships. So that means that all the contracts have to be pulled down in the old staging system. All the ships have to be repackaged. They then have to be moved by jump freighters, then multi-fitted back, and then all those contracts have to be put up again. Now, if you're talking about sort of 10 different doctrines, which is not, is totally normal for this kind of conflict, then you're talking thousands of contracts that all have to be put up. So this takes a few days, and to do it in 2 or 3 days is actually pretty good. So as a consequence of that, nothing really happened. Now, at the end of the last episode, I said that the way the events I would expect them to turn out would be that ratters and miners would be hit, then jump bridges and sino jammers would be taken down, and then I-hubs would be reinforced. And as we're going to see for the events of this week, that's pretty much what's happened. Now, there wasn't actually any major attacks on miners and whalers, simply because there wasn't much whaling on miners and ratters, as it is my understanding that Goonswarm suggested or forced, I don't know which it was, that there would be no capitals on grid in Delve for ratting and mining. Now, obviously, there's always an exception to the cause, and it was actually in Quirius, which was in BTAC 7. If I just jump to my map, it's down here in the bottom left. And if we scroll down, you will see that 4 raw calls died. Now, these raw calls were undocked either because of greed or either because they were unaware that that system was now within jump range of the staging system of the enemy, in this case, PAPI. Now, if it was greed, it was most likely because there's an R64 moon in the system, and they had already pulled the rock from the moon, the rock exploded, and they didn't want to leave loads of R64 ore to go to waste, and so they decided to YOLO and go out and hope for the best. Now, a raw call can normally tank a subcap fleet pretty well, even after the panic moment. It's got enough cap boosters, and if there's 4 on grid, the assumption normally is like, oh well, 1 goes, well at least we kept 3, so we're okay. But when 20 dreads land on grid, then it doesn't matter how much your rock can tank, it's going to melt. And that's what happened in this particular incident. So that is pretty much the only thing that happened on the whaling front. Now, when it comes to sino jammers and jump bridges though, that's a very, very different story. So if we actually look at this kill board, this is a kill board of just jump gates. And you can see that, let me bring my my calendar back up again. As of October the 20th, which was Tuesday, jump bridges started to fall in Delft. So in KTAC 6, SVM, OTAC H, and DTAC 3. And then there was some more on October 21st, and then some more on October 22nd. And the thing that's notable about this is that the jump gates are much easier to deal with than iHubs. And they're the very, very first port of call because they provide easy movement for the Imperium fleets to move around Delft. And in particular, where they really, really help is in retreat. Because you can bridge from your staging with a Titan and you can get pretty much wherever you need to go. But getting back is a different matter. You normally have to gate it back unless you bring a Titan into system to bridge back. And I'm going to come onto that in a minute because that's relevant. But that's the main reason why jump bridges are hit first. Also, they only have one timer, so you just shoot them once, they get reinforced. Normally the reinforcement time is quite short, and then you come back and finish the job. So as you saw, and a whole bunch of jump gates went down. Now the jump gates all went down in one constellation, pretty much. And if I change the map over to a constellation map, it's this constellation down here, the one in light purple, that's just south of YZ9. And the reason why all the jump gates were taken down was because PAPI decided they wanted to hit the iHubs. Now iHubs are really, really critical, and they are the most important thing. And if we actually go and look at the iHub map as it stands this morning, which is the 26th, Monday the 26th, you can see that it's no longer all Condi. And down over here, you can now see that the iHubs are owned by Pandemic Horde, by NC, by Requiem Eternal, Brave, and Test. So that is where the conflict is happening. The conflict is happening on these iHubs. And the reason why they all happen within a constellation is the way that sovereignty warfare works. So if you're not familiar with the concept, it's basically holding a flag. So if we go onto a timer board, so you can see here, this was on Wednesday, the 21st of October. And you can see that all these iHubs, which these are all the systems that you saw in that constellation, were all reinforced. And then you see the timer and when it's going to be coming out. Now, talking of timers, I'm going to mention this very quickly as well, that when you set your vulnerability timer, it also sets the timer at which these can then be attacked. Now, if we look at the timers very quickly, let me bring it up. Where's my timers? Vulnerable, there we go. You will notice that all of the Imperium timers are all set in US time zone. If I click on it down here, it'll be a little bit clearer. Actually, no, that's let me do a Goonswarm one, that would be better. There we go, let's click here. You can see infrastructure hub. Right, I picked one that was reinforced. That wasn't too smart. Let's pick one over here. There we go. Okay, so you can see that the timers down here are set to US time zone. So 23:34 UTC over to 4:25 in the morning UTC. So clearly, it looks like the Imperium feel that they have a much, that is their strongest time zone. And so that's the time in which they're making their structures vulnerable. So coming back to the constellation and to SOV warfare, the way that it works is that when a structure is reinforced, the nodes will appear at a particular time. Now these nodes appear all the way throughout the constellation. And so you then have to hold these nodes and basically fire a beam at them with a thing called an entosis link for a number of minutes, which can vary depending on the type of entosis link that you have and the ADM, so the activity defense multiplier. But generally it comes in about 10 minutes, rounding off very generally. So you have to circle around this node for 10 minutes, firing this beam, you can't warp away, and you have to be protected by a fleet to make sure that you don't get hit. And this is where this is going to be showing to be a problem for the Imperium, and that is in the structure of PAPI. So PAPI is made up of lots of different coalitions, and as a consequence of that, these all can work very, very independently. So traditionally, the way SOV warfare works, when you've got small alliances, or just a couple of alliances fighting each other, is that you're basically bouncing around with one or two fleets all around these systems, trying to protect your entosis ships. So back in the day, it used to be claws, which back then were interceptors that could go through bubbles and used to fly around in these packs of interceptors. Then it moved on to jackdaws because they were more effective. But now this has changed completely in this particular conflict, because the amount of individual alliances that are involved means that PAPI can place a fleet in every system with its own FC, operating completely independently of the other. So you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 systems. They're able to drop 9 fleets in system. They don't have to move, they don't have to go through gates, they don't have to worry about being bubbled, and they can just focus on protecting the nodes in that system. And that is going to be, I think, going to be very, very difficult for the Imperium to deal with unless they can field the same number of FCs. And if we actually look, there was actually a conflict over one of the timers in KTAC 6 right here. And this happened on, where was it? There we go. So on the 23rd. And it was at 1 o'clock in the morning. So you can see it was in that time zone that's favored by Goonswarm and Imperium as a whole. Now, this was a pretty big conflict. There were no Titans, but there was everything else. But the thing that I want to bring to your attention is that whilst they did bring in loads of supers and carriers, and they did come out on top in the ISK war on this one by quite a bit. So the losses from PAPI were 27 billion, and the losses were 16 for the Imperium. But the thing, if I do a Control F and just let's just search for monitor, and let me just see, make sure I can do that. There we go. Wrong one. Hang on, close my bookmarks. Bring up monitor. There we go. Right. So you can see the monitors are the subcap kind of FC ships de rigueur that are always used by FCs because they have such high resistances. And if there's Logi on grid, those things are pretty much indestructible as long as the Logi's there. But you can see that Goonswarm had 3 monitors on grid. But if we just scroll down now and look at the PAPI side, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 monitors. So that means 13 FCs were involved in this fight. So they obviously got pulled back from all of these constellations to get involved in this one big fight in K6. And I think this is something that is going to probably be a big decider in this war, is how many individual fleets can be put out by each side to manage each of the systems in this SOV warfare. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. What isn't clear here, though, is that what this battle report doesn't show is how many losses there may have been on the way back. So if we look back at our map in Dell, so the fight took place here. And if I go back to just my sovereignty, you can see that they have to go north to 319 and then head back down through here. Now there's still, at the time of this fight, still had jump bridges here that allowed them to jump down to Quirius, and then from Quirius they can jump right back to 1DQ with the jump gates that are there. But they still have to go really, really close to the staging system of the enemy. And this 319 gate can be bubble camped to hell. Which makes it very, very difficult for subcaps to get out. Now, you could bridge a Titan into this constellation, and there are a couple of Keepstars there, but it would be very unwise to do that because these Keepstars are not being used on a regular basis. And so, therefore, it's very possible for PAPI to put in some heavy interdictors and safe log them off on the Keepstar unnoticed. And so, if suddenly someone undocked a Titan there, they could get bubbled and scrammed, and then this would force the Imperium to have to respond to that and to bring in capitals. And it is too early at this stage to be involved in that kind of big capital fight, especially over an objective that isn't that strategic at the moment. Goonswarm can afford to lose this. It's not a big deal for them. It's more to do with morale, which is something we're going to come on to a little bit further on. So anyway, all of these systems ended up getting lost, and as you saw from the iHub ownership, you saw that all of these systems got taken over by PAPI. The other thing to note here as well is that with PAPI, they haven't just put all of the iHubs to one alliance. So you can see Northern Coalition have one, Pandemic Horde have two, Requiem have two, Test have one, Brave have one, etc. And the reason for that is that when you're defending with SOV warfare, you can only entosis with the alliance members that belong to that alliance. So when you attack, anybody can entosis a node. But when you're defending, you have to belong to the alliance to which the iHub belongs to. And so what this is doing is it's spreading the load amongst the alliances, so that you're not having one particular alliance that's constantly have to bring out toasters. Those are entosis ships. Having to find pilots to man toasters. So it takes less strain off of the constant process of SOV warfare. So once again, that's I think is a very smart move, and it's going to be something that I think is going to be quite difficult to counter. Right. So moving on, we're just going to look at the timer board. So as you can see, all the iHubs were kind of brought in and reinforced and then taken. But what was interesting here is that there's a flip back, that Goonswarm came back and reinforced the iHubs back in the other direction. Now, I find this quite bizarre because there is no strategic advantage in doing this. And once again, this comes down to game mechanics, that an iHub allows you to place in jump bridges and sino-jammers. But you can only do that when the strategic index of your iHub is at level 3. Now, the strategic index is based on how long the iHub is in place, and it is a fixed timer. It is based over time. So you get level 1 after 7 days, you get level 2 after 21 days. It takes 35 days or 5 weeks to reach level 3. So to flip an iHub back as the defender isn't going to help you for 5 weeks, even if you manage to get it back implanted. For the attacker, if they can just leave it, let the defender put their iHub back, and they know they don't have to touch it for 5 weeks before it actually becomes of use. And so therefore that seems like a very, very strange thing to do, and it may be morale based, that you have the situation where the line members see their iHub get attacked, they lose the iHub, then we've got to take it back, right? It's ours, we've got to take it back. And so it's seen to be reacting and to not just letting things slip, when in fact that is the right thing to do. You need to focus your efforts on the jump bridges that are being attacked and the iHub timers for iHubs that actually still have their strategic level at 3. So interesting to see how that's playing out. And another item that caught me by surprise was actually in Quirius. Now in Quirius, let me just come back to, let me go to right here. So in 49U, 49 TAC U down the bottom here, there is a Goonswarm Keepstar. And what I found very, very surprising was that this iHub was reinforced by Goonswarm for Sunday night. And if we look at the strategic index, you can see the strategic index is now at level 4 for this system. And so therefore, this means that Test at any time can drop in a Sino Jammer in this system. And there is a Goonswarm Keepstar there. So I was really, really surprised when this came out of reinforcement, and there was no attack from Goonswarm. They decided not to engage on this and let this iHub stay, which puts the Keepstar in a vulnerable position, because potentially they can drop in a Sino Jammer, and then Goonswarm will not be able to drop in a capital force in order to be able to protect it, and everything will have to come through gate. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Now, another item that was of interest and confirmed what I said about retreat was that one of the timers, it was in 49 WTAC-K. So I don't know if I've got no, I haven't got the kill map for that. But what happened in WTAC-K was one of these iHubs that Goonswarm flipped. They actually came and did fight over it, but they brought Lokis. And the reason why they brought Lokis is because Lokis can be refit into Cloaky Lokis, which makes them Black Ops ships, which means that you can jump in with a Titan into the constellation, which was the constellation down here, the purple one. Let me bring it back up again, there we go, down here. And then they can jump in a Black Ops battleship and jump back using Black Ops. And they can do this from any structure, they can do it in space. They're not going to get themselves caught trying to get home. But the issue with the Lokis is they're extremely expensive, They don't normally, it's not something you give to a skirmish FC, because if you whelp the fleet, people lose skill points, and that can cause loads of issues. And that brings me on to another subject. If you guys want me to talk about the doctrines, whether it's a Ferox, Munins, Jackdaws, Harpies, why these fleets are brought out, why these doctrines exist, and how they counter each other, then let me know in the comments and we can take it from there. But anyway, that kind of wraps it up. So the situation we've got right now is that all of these systems in that constellation are really not, are now very much under the control of PAPI. And as you can see from these orange little glows right here, in this next constellation, so let me bring it back to constellations again, and this kind of brown, light brown constellation right here, is that PAPI are trying to move down this pipe towards 1DQ. Now the reason why they're favoring this pipe rather than this one right here is primarily because they want to try and cut off Quirius. This is my belief, that they want to try and cut off this little pipe in Quirius here, because this little pipe here is really bizarre. If we actually click on Quirius, it's this little pipe right here on the left hand side, and what it allows them to do is it allows them to come into this area down the bottom here and then move up and come up through 1DH and pop out right here. And so therefore they're able to create a pincer movement on anything that travels down this pipe down here, so down through NOL to OTAC-I to QX, etc. So if a fleet is returning, they can come out of 1DQ, jump through Quirius, come out in 1DH, and then cut them off. And along the way, they can waterboard them with sabers, with dictators, to slow down the fleet, forcing them to go onto a ping, which basically slows down their time it takes them to get back to their staging. So I think that is the reason why they're kind of moving in this general direction. Now, one last thing as well, but see, as I said, there's a lot of stuff to cover in this. One last thing that was surprising was that, let me see, some TCUs were reinforced by PAPI in the constellation, that purple constellation that you saw before, but they weren't contested, and I was really surprised about that, because what this comes down to now is the story, the narrative that each side is going to want to show. So the situation is PAPI, they need to maintain their advantage in numbers, and in order to do that, they need to be seen to be advancing. Now, unless you're looking at the situation like we are now and you get a really good idea of what's going on, if you're just looking at the sovereignty, there doesn't seem to be much happening, and there isn't inroads. And so by taking TCUs, like they did in Quirius, so if we look at Quirius very quickly, which I need to switch back, there we go, you can see that this is all these systems, apart from this pipe down on the left hand side here, are now all PAPI systems, and it kind of clearly shows to the player, oh yeah, no, we are here, we are established here. And once again, very bizarre that Imperium are attacking some of the iHubs here, because there's no strategic value in doing that. So I'm not quite sure what the thinking is with that. Maybe it's just that harassment mentality, and maybe trying to get a few fleets to whelp from them having to react at short notice, or react in small numbers, because PAPI is not going to send all of its fleets to protect this. So it may be just an attempt to wear down the morale of some of the fleets by actually achieving some win objectives here over PAPI. But either way, PAPI really need to be seen to be taking TCUs to show that they are advancing into Delve, whilst on the flip side, the Imperium need to be seen to be winning either objectives or just winning the ISK war or winning fights. And it's going to be interesting to see now how it plays out over the next week, because next week is going to be the grind. It's when everything's getting repetitive and it's not very clear which side is kind of really making progress. So we'll see how it plays out. So much longer video than the last one. There was a lot of stuff to cover. Hopefully I did it in a concise manner all the same. If you've made it all the way through, thank you very much for watching all the way through. If you want me to keep on going with this, then I'm happy to do so. I think this is now turning out to be a very interesting conflict, and it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It is not a done deal on either side, and the strategic decisions that are going to be made will have a strong impact. Right, thank you for watching. Give me a like, subscribe, really helps the channel. Give me some comments, and I will see you on the next one. Right, thank you very much. Bye.